Hello, hello, hello. Hi everyone. So it's been a while here. I wanted to make the basic pattern I needed for my next tutorial. It's been a while I did any one. So I just thought to record this process. It could be useful to anyone. So you can call this pattern drafting unfiltered. So I'll just get right into it. These are some of the tools I'll be using for this tutorial. My pattern paper, of course, my pen. I have three different types of curves here. This is an hip curve, this is a French curve, this is an armhole curve. I have my tracing wheel for side darts. I have my tape rule. I have my scissors. This is for my paper, by the way. Paper scissors. I have this. I use it to draw my neck curve sometimes. I feel like it's rounder than using my curves. Yeah. So I'll get right into it. Let me set all of this aside. Hello, I can see you. Janet Cole, hello, welcome. Hello, hello everyone. Hi Ramon Ramirez. I hope I am calling your name well. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining. So we'll begin with the drafting now. First of all, I'm going to draw out a margin line of about 1 inch. So I'm working with the back pattern first. This is the back. I'm also going to make a 1 inch margin here for my zipper allowance. Mind you, I'm working with the back pattern. So I'm going to mark 1 inch, a straight line. So I'm going to be using this for my zipper allowance. I know some people use 2 inches for their zipper allowance, but I just use 1, so it is not bulky. So after doing that, I'm going to mark my back half length. That's from my shoulder to my waist for the back. And the one I'm working with is 14 inches. So the shoulder to the waist at the back is 14. For the front is 16. So our front half length is 2 inches longer than the back. Bear that in mind. So I'm marking 14 inches for our half length line, and then I'm going to make a straight line there. Please let me know if you can hear me, if I'm audible enough. So I'm going to label this as my waistline. On my pencil, actually. Let me do that briefly. So from my waistline, I'm going to measure the hip line. So from the waist to the hip line is 11 inches. So I'm also going to mark that 11 inches, and I'll draw a straight line. So this is going to be my hip line. So the next line I'm going to deal with is the armhole line for, sorry, we'll call it the back underarm line. That's under your arm. Sometimes it's not necessarily the armhole. You understand? Let me not speak like too much. So I'm working with what I call the back underarm line. That is under your armpits. That's what it basically means. And one of the rules to get it in the pattern drafting style I use is to divide the distance between your shoulder and your waistline. You are going to divide it by 2 and subtract 1 from that. So let's break it down. In this case, the shoulder to the waistline for the back I'm working with is 14 inches. Then we're going to divide that by 2. That will give us 7, right? Then we're going to subtract 1 from that. So minus 1 would be equals to 6. So from the waistline, I'm going to mark upwards 6 inches, and that will be the back underarm line. So whatever the distance between the shoulder to the waistline for your own back is, whatever it is, you're going to divide it by 2 and then subtract 1 from that. I hope I am clear enough. So from the waistline here, I'm going to mark 6 inches upwards. That is the result I have. So here I'm going to draw out my straight line. Like I mentioned, this is the back underarm line. I'll label that. Then the next thing we're going to do is to find our across back. And the way to get it is to divide the distance between here and this point. From the margin here, we're going to find the distance between this margin and the back underarm line. And that is going to serve as our across back. So for me, the distance between here and there is 8 inches. So I'm going to find the midpoint of that. That will be 4 inches. So I'm going to mark 4 inches here. and I'm going to label that as my across back line. Then the next line is the back shoulder line. That is where your shoulder sloping from the neckline down to your shoulder. For the back, typically is 1 inch. So I've marked my 1 inch from here. I marked down 1 inch from my margin line here, and this is going to be my back shoulder line, what some people know as shoulder slope. So I label that as shoulder line. So we're done with our horizontal measurement. We're going to move on to the vertical measurement. On the shoulder line, I'm going to mark my shoulder divided by 2. The shoulder I'm working with is 16 inches. 16 inches divided by 2 is 8 inches. So I'm going to mark 8 inches. Mind you, I'm marking from here, not here. Remember, I'm going to use this as my zipper allowance. So from here, I'm going to mark shoulder divided by 2. Like I said, it's 18 inches divided by 2 is 8 inches. So I'll go ahead and mark that. Then I'll come to the across back line. What we're going to do is, remember that the shoulder divided by 2 that I'm working with here is 8 inches. I'll take out 0.25 from that. Whatever your shoulder line divided by 2 is that you've marked here, you're going to take out 0.25 here. So in my own case, I have 7.75. So I'll come down here and mark 7.75. Then I'm going to replicate whatever I have here on the back underarm line. Now that this is done, there's something I need to confirm. I'm going to confirm if the distance between my shoulder line and the back underarm line is equal to my client's armhole circumference. So our armhole depth rather. Our armhole depth is 7 inches. And how do I arrive at 7 inches? For the armhole depth, you divide your bust by 8. So our bust is 36. 36 divided by 8 is 4.5. Then this 4.5, you're going to add a standard, whatever your own result is. You're going to add a standard of 2 inches to it. Sorry, you're going to add a standard of 2.5. Let me go over that again. Your bust divided by 8. So in my own case, it's 36. 36 divided by 8 is 4.5 inches. So I'm going to add a standard of 2.5 inches to whatever my result is. And that will leave me at 7 inches. That is how to arrive at the armhole depth. So I go over that again. Your armhole depth is equal to your bust divided by 8 plus a standard of 2.5 inches. I hope you get that. Okay. So I'm going to confirm if the distance between my shoulder line here, this line, not here, the distance between here and here is equal to 7 inches. If it is not, I'm going to make that adjustment. So in this case, I have exactly 7 inches. So I'm good to go. If it was somewhere here, I would have adjusted it. If it was too deep, you adjust it until you get your result. I hope you get that. So now that that is done, I am going to connect all these 3 points. And now we're done with that face. On this back underarm line, I'm going to mark my bust divided by 4. That's 1/4 of my bust, or 1/4 of my bust. So the bust I'm working with is 36 inches. 36 divided by 4 is 9 inches. So I'm going to mark out my 9 inches. And I'll go ahead and add, for me I use a seam allowance of 1 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and also mark my 1 inch. I'll get my eraser and clean off all this so that I don't get anything mixed up. Now that that is out of the way, I'm going to insert my waist divided by 4. The waist I'm working with is 28 inches. 28 inches divided by 4 is 7 inches. So I'll go ahead and insert my 7 inches. And I'll also add my 1 inch sewing, yes, my 1 inch sewing allowance. But for the but because we need to add that to this back, I'm going to add the dart allowance of 1 inch and also 1 inch for my sewing allowance. I hope you get it. So this is my waist divided by 4, 7 inches. 1 inch is going to be for my dart, inch for my sewing allowance. I believe that is clear enough. And then I move ahead to my hip line. I'm going to also insert my hip divided by 4. My hip, the hip I'm working with is 40 inches. So 40 divided by 4 is 10 inches. I mark that, and I'm going to mark 1 inch for my sewing allowance. And then I'll start connecting. I'm not going to connect from here, I'm going to connect from my dart allowance here. I'll also connect my sewing allowance. And I'll try to blend in the pointed corner here. This is sharp and our bodies are not sharp like this, so I'm going to use the curved part of my ruler to blend that in. And now this is what I have. Now we can draw out our darts. On the waistline, I'm going to mark the dart points, and what I'm going to be using is line. Use nipple to nipple measurements to find I'm going to mark 0.5 for my dart legs because I'm using 1 inch for my dart, so that will be 0.5 on each side, so altogether that will be 1 inch. So that means I've successfully taken in my dart allowance. First of all, I'm going to connect this point to this point. Let me do that. Connected this, I'm also going to connect this back to this point. But on the hip line, there's a difference. You don't want to. But on the hip line, there's a difference. You don't want to eat into your hip measurement. Do this. By the time you are done sewing, you might discover that your hip is tighter than it should be. That is why we are coming up by 2 inches. So I'm going to connect my dart legs to this point. And our dart is all sorted. Now we can move on to the neckline. I'm going to just use 3 inches by 3 inches, and the depth will be, let me just do that. So for the neck depth, I'm going to mark 3 inches. You can as well your bust by 12 inches, but in this case I'm just going to use 3 inches because the dress I'm making does not need me to use the exact neckline that fits our body, so this is fine. And on this point I'm going to draw out a but I just go up by 0.5 because most times I usually like my back to be properly covered. That is why I do that. So either ways is fine, but this point I'm going upward by 0.5, and now I can make my curve. So this is my neck curve, and now I can connect this point to this point. That's my neckline to my shoulder. Now that that is done, I can draw my armhole curve. So I basically ensure that my armhole curve touches this point at the shoulder line, the point at the across back, and also somewhere on my back arm, underarm line, or your armhole, whichever the case is. It does not necessarily have to touch this point, but somewhere along this line is fine. So I'll try to set my armhole curve until it touches those 3 points. Don't mind my curve. I placed iron on it, so it has what's it called, distorted the shape a little. That's why I'm struggling with it. It's not meant to be this difficult. We're going to make it work either way. So this is what I have. Now that we're done, I'm basically done. But before I add my sewing allowances rather, remember I said I like to use 1 inch for my zipper allowance, but to avoid gaping around the zipper area, we're going to take out rather some about 0.75 or 1 inch from the back, just so that it does not gape at all, because there's a dip around our waistline at the back, and that is why this step is also very important. So this is 1 inch. I want to take out 0.75 from the back, so I'm going to mark my 0.75. There are like 2 ways to do this. Let me show you the first one. Even though I don't use it anymore, when you go in by 0.75 or 1 inch, you can decide to, from here, connect to the back armhole line. So you can do something like this. I'll use break lines to show you. You can go like this, and then from here also connect back to the hip like this. I hope you can see it. You can decide to go this way, but usually I don't think I like it as much as this method. Let me show you the method I use often, and I usually would like how my zipper sits well on my back. So now that I've measured my 0.75, I'm going to come up and down by 3 inches. This is up by 3 inches. I'm also going to come down by 3 inches. These are like guides basically. And with my pencil, I'm going to, let me just show you. I can't explain it, but I kind of go in like this. When I reach about 3 inches, I would taper in. Can you see? I'll do something like this, and I'll repeat the same process towards it. So I'll go like this. I'll go. So basically, I'm walking towards here in a curved manner. Then when I get to that 3 inches mark, I'll taper in properly. And this is basically it. If this is too sharp, you can decide to blend in a little like this. And I'm basically done with that. Now that, so I'm only going to cut out this part. I'm going to retain all of this. So this is the only part that is going to come off at the back. So that way I've added all my sewing allowances. So I don't need this. I don't need all this anymore. I'm going to trim this off and retain the rest. So now I can add all my sewing allowances. At the tip here, I'm going to go up by 0.5 inch rather. That's my sewing allowance. I'm going to also mark 0.5 here. That is my sewing allowance for the shoulder. And I'm going to connect those 2 points together.